Good evening, and tonight on our show, The Other Side, is our special guest, Chief Darin. We're going to talk about IEPs as a follow-up, and we're also going to be talking about Common Core. Stay tuned. Tonight, our guest is Chief Darin. Chief, thanks for coming in tonight.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you coming in, taking the time to talk to us. Why don't you give the folks at home a little bit of an idea who you are, how long you've been with the department, and some background on it.
Well, my name's Dave Darin. Some of you have seen me around, hopefully. I'm going on here in Spencer 17 years as chief, 20 years overall as chief from North Brookfield to here in Spencer. 30, going on 33 years in the profession overall.
Not bad. Well, we got some questions. We had some people that contacted us because they had some questions because they knew we were going to be taping this tonight. I guess my first question is, do we have enough police for a town this size?
We have 17 full-time members of the department, 11 full-time patrolmen, a detective, a court officer, 3 sergeants and myself, and we have 4 full-time dispatchers, 4 part-time dispatchers, 3 part-time animal control officers, and a part-time custodian. So we're basically getting things done. Calls are being answered in a timely manner, investigations are being conducted, so that the business of the town from a public safety standpoint is being taken care of. But we obviously, with that staffing, if you do the math, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, we're spread quite thin.
Now, so say you guys have somebody calls in sick or somebody, has like a hospital stay or something. How does that impact you? Are you able to cover the shifts without too much grief, or is that a real problem for you folks? If you lost 1 or 2 guys at the same time.
Right. I mean, with senior folks like that we have, there's a pretty significant amount of vacation time, personal time. There's holidays, there's sick times, there's situations when an officer is at training or when they're out injured. So we have an amount of money set aside to cover vacancies such as shift coverage, when they have court, when they have training, when we have protracted investigations, when we just have shift extensions, when an accident or an investigation takes place at the end of a shift and we need to hold the person over so that we have extra staffing. So we do have sufficient time and sufficient funds to do that. But as I said, we have 17 individuals spread out over 7 days in 3 shifts a day. It is quite thin. So in most cases, when someone takes a vacation time, we have to fill that vacancy with overtime, so it is costly.
That's not a lot of people.
It isn't really. It isn't a lot of people. If you look at our comparable communities, we're about 2 to 3 understaffed for our size or our population of Spencer.
Now you've got some folks on. I know John must be getting close. John Agnew must be getting close to retirement. What happens when you have older officers that are going to be looking at retirement at some point in the future? Is that something you're going to be able to slide somebody else into a position?
We're pretty much locked. We seem to be locked into this 17 staffing level, and that's been that way since I've been here on the department for the past 17 years. So yes, unless another financial crisis follows the town, yes, the intent would be to replace any folks that retire.
Okay. Seen a lot of new faces in town. How does this impact you guys doing your job?
I mean, our job basically is done. Our people follow our policies. We follow the law. So it's really meaningless. In a commuter society as it is in Spencer today, as it is in most communities, people don't live where they work anymore. Most of the people we run into are someone that we've run into for the first time. So I stress on everyone that they do their job consistently, even if it's somebody that they've seen every day or somebody they're seeing for the first time. The best way for us to keep ourselves out of trouble, so to speak, is to do things by the book as often as we can and follow the law, and we won't have any trouble.
Now, as you know, November is going to be a big month, not only for the national elections, but also for the override. How's that override going to impact if it does pass and if it doesn't pass?
We lost $16,000 and change from the budget cuts that occurred, and so that amount of money we'll be looking to have reinstated to the police budget should the override pass. And so we've been running short since July. What happened was we lost $10,000 off of that overtime account, which you spoke about. Now, granted, out of an overtime account of, I believe it's 235,000 and change, 10,000 doesn't sound like a lot of money, but as I'd said, with the staffing level spread as thin as we are and the reliance on overtime that we need, 10,000 is going to have an impact on how we do our job. No way around it. Not really significant, but it's going to be a notable impact. So we would like to have that money back. The other part of it was $6,000 from our custodian. Our part-time custodian worked 18 hours now. He works 9. And in a building that's 30 plus years old, he also filled in kind of as a handyman. Now we find ourselves in situations where he can keep up with the cleanliness of the building, but we run into situations where we can't avail his services as a handyman, so we have to job a lot of that out to a third party. So it would be also nice to have him back from 9 to 18 hours a week to help keep up with the building, especially since it's difficult to get capital money to do repairs, so we have to make do with what we have, the building that we have, with the circumstances that we have. So we have to do a lot of repairs rather than replacement. So it's nice to have him there for that added time.
Now, what do your capital purchases look like? You know, looking down the road, I know Chief Parsons is looking at replacing engine 2. Do you guys have anything like that on the horizon? And I know some of this stuff just pops up like anybody else. Sometimes it just happens.
Well, we're fortunate where our vehicles, a new police vehicle, fully equipped, is about $35,000 compared to what they have to do for a fire truck. I mean, we're pretty fortunate.
It's a chunk of change.
We've had a new cruiser funded for Spencer for, the last 15 fiscal years. So our fleet situation is pretty strong. We have 10 vehicles, 9 for the patrol staff and 2 for animal control. And for the most part, we hang on to them for about 6 years. They're all in pretty good shape. We're able to keep up with maintenance, and we'll replace them once every year. As far as the capital items, ours run into computer technology, maintenance to the building. Like recently, we did a new roof, we did new windows. So those are the kind of items that we need to try and keep up with. This particular fiscal year, I'm going to be looking for some funds we have an electronic fingerprint device that we use. It basically replaced, when I first started, the old days of doing fingerprints with ink and by hand are now done electronically and submitted directly to the state repository, and then we receive fairly prompt response at whether the person whose fingerprints were taken is who they say they are. So that device is 5 or 6 years old and needs to be replaced, so we're going to need funds for that. We're also going to need some funds this year for an ailing HVAC system at the police department. So those are probably, and they're, compared to what the fire department's looking for in a fire truck, they're relatively small, low-ticket items. But if there's a limited amount of free cash available, there's going to be a very small pool of capital money that's going to be available. So like last year, the only capital item, I think we looked for 4 or 5 items. The only one that was approved was the cruiser. So those items that we didn't get last year get pushed off into this year, and then our whole 10-year plan gets moved back. So it does take its toll from a capital standpoint when the town has fiscal difficulties.
And it's got to be frustrating, because I know all the department heads are dealing with it. I spoke to Mary Baker Wood the other day, who runs the library, and they're worried about losing the certification. Bob's worried about, how are we going to fund this possibly fund this engine 2. This thing tends to snowball, so it's a problem for everybody, but especially with public safety, I think it becomes a lot more under a magnifying glass, because you guys are called to do so many different things.
And it does and to think of it, yes, I understand when someone casts a vote, they do so based on whether they feel that there's a need, and I think whether they feel that they can afford it. And I understand that, and all the department heads understand it, but we take what we do very passionately, and we want to see the best, not just for our department, but for the job that we do. So as from the police department standpoint, there's many things that I would like to see us be able to do and provide to the community. So it's disappointing sometimes when the finances aren't there to make that happen. But we understand it. Obviously, we have to work with what we've got. It just makes it a little difficult.
That brings up a good point. What are some of the things you'd like to do if you had a little bit more money to work with?
Ours is primarily staffing. Our facility's in pretty good shape. It needs its capital items from here and there, but ours is mostly personnel. We'd like to have a couple of additional persons. I'd like to be able to do something more on a community outreach basis. As I had said before, we primarily do the bare minimum from a public safety standpoint. We have a fairly robust child passenger safety program where we do certifications and installations on child passenger safety seats, but that's something that we can factor into the day-to-day jobs and don't require overtime to be able to do that function. We can have an officer who's certified to do that type of installation, do it as part of his regular patrol shift. But I would like to do more things on a community outreach basis, especially with the schools. There's so much can be done at that point in time, and the time to get to the kids is when they're young and impressionable. And there's so many things I think we could do with the school if the finances were there. And then with additional personnel, I would like to do a little bit more with investigations. I mean, obviously, for the most part, patrol officers handle a lot of the calls, and arrests can be made in some cases, but in many cases, there's a protracted issues that require an investigation to go on for several days. So I think in many cases, we don't get to spend as much time and as much time with the victims that we would like to. I'd like to spend more time with the victims, spend more time with those investigations, hopefully increase our resolution rate with being able to spend additional time, additional hours to it. So it's mostly personnel.
And that's got to be frustrating.
It is. I mean, you would like to do, you do the job, you do this profession, yeah, you draw a paycheck, but you do this kind of work because you want to help people and you want to do the best that you can do with what you have. And when those resources aren't there, you understand why, because there's a reason for it, but it's disappointing.
I think you guys do a good job. I mean, it's like we were talking about earlier, and I was kidding you, and I said, you don't see the police in the paper, but it's true. I mean, it's, given the issues we had in the past when I first moved to this town, it was in the course of that whole thing with the state police, and it's like, I got to say, I know a few of the officers, not on a real well basis, but I mean, I talk to them and say hi or see people, but I got to say they've always been responsive. They've been in my neighborhood a couple times for some issues that were going on. And they've always been professional, and I think they do a great job. And I think it's kind of like the fire department. You guys are like seen but not seen. When somebody needs you, you want somebody to be there. And I think we're pretty lucky as far as public safety goes, because I think we've got a good police department, and I think we've got a really good fire department. And it's like, given the fact that the funds aren't there, you can only hope that this override, the people are going to make the right decisions and do what they need to do.
I'm fortunate that we've got a very senior bunch of police officers. Decent amount of time, good average age, a little bit higher, not a lot of youngsters.
You see a lot of the
not
same
that that's
faces.
bad, but yeah, and that's the credit to things that everybody's willing to stick it out, but it also means when somebody's a little bit older, they're a little bit more tolerant. And currently, with our line of work, you're going to ruffle some feathers sometimes because you don't always see people at their best. But I think overall, we do a pretty good job, and I like to see that. I think it's important. It's important not from just our standpoint, to keep us out of trouble, but from a community standpoint. I think that's what the community wants. I think that's what they pay for. So, hopefully, when the time comes and they feel that they have the means to pay a little bit more, maybe they'll look and say, hey, that's a worthy cause. Maybe I will contribute a little bit more, because I would like the police department to have a few more people and expand their areas or their community outreach or their investigative program.
Now, following up on that, you've been here for a number of years now. Is there any significant changes you've seen in Spencer in terms of makeup or crime or anything else, or drop or an increase? Or
I would say the biggest thing is cybercrime. I mean, you would think when you hear cybercrime, you think of it of terrorism, but identity theft, and that's probably one of the biggest scourges, and I see it just getting worse. In my days. If there was fraud, you had your credit card stolen, maybe it would turn up by somebody at the Auburn Mall, or you had to worry about the guy that was sealing your driveway, scamming you out of a good job. But now you can basically, somebody from across the country or across the world can steal money from you through a computer or by a telephone. And in most cases, it's almost impossible for us to ever find out who did that. So it's almost 100% come down to the individual being cognizant about what's going on and taking the internet really serious, as far as that's a stranger. Every email that you open, every attachment that you click on is a stranger knocking at your door at 2 o'clock in the morning, and you got to think of it that way. Not just opening the door saying, oh my God, now there's a burglar there. But it could be somebody that could ruin my life financially and take a very long time to straighten it out. So I think, if ever, in many cases. So that's one of the things that I think is going to continue as technology continues to advance, is going to continue to get worse. And people are going to have to be more vigilant on their own about what they do and what they have access to. And social media is just, it's a blessing and a curse at the same time.
Now, following up on that, that's funny you bring it up. How come Spencer Police Department, I know Spencer Fire Department has a Facebook presence.
Right.
You guys don't. I look for it tonight. In fact, I looked to see.
We've been exploring it. I've been in a number of conferences in regards to social media use, and it's happening. It's going to happen, and it's not just because I'm an old timer and not looking for it.
Is it kind of a catch-22 situation?
Not necessarily, but it's one of those things where if you're not prepared to get into it with both hands and make sure that the material is fresh and current, people are not going to come back and visit you.
That's the hard part.
So yeah, that was one of those things. Until in the advice that I'd received and a lot of the training that I'd had, until you're ready in a position, you understand what you're going to use it for, and it's going to be something that you're going to monitor and update on a daily basis, don't try. Because people will start, you'll get a lot of initial interest, and then the interest will die out once that they see that the material is not being refreshed on an average basis. But I definitely do see the value to it. Facebook and Twitter in particular, as far as short notifications, as far as criminal activity in a particular neighborhood, or that there's a car accident, avoid this particular area of time. But a combination of those two particular social medias together, I think the time will come. It's just not, we're not just quite there yet as far as the police department goes.
You worried more about having an individual dedicated to updating
exactly,
that and taking care of that?
Exactly. And where we're short-staffed with that, that person would most likely end up being me, and it's a luxury. It's one of those things where we really don't have the time to do it right. And that's one of the difficulties that I find with limited staffing that we have, is I have to look at everything. I says, geez, I would really like to do that. It's really important. There's a value to it. But if we can't do it right, and it's kind of it's a little bit of a luxury, I gotta say, all right, I'm gonna put this on the list. And when we're in a position where we can do it, then maybe we'll take it on. But I'm not going to load ourselves up with things that would be nice to do, make a good first impression, and then we can't follow through on it, and they kind of die and wither on the vine.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
One of the things that somebody brought up was the needle issues. Apparently, they're finding needles down at Cumberland Farms, out by the dumpster. They're finding needles right across the street. There's a daycare center there. They're finding needles in the streets there. First of all, what's the protocol if anybody finds a needle in the street?
If anyone finds a needle in the street, just give us a call. We have it's become very difficult since needles are now legal items. It used to be something where that was illegal to possess. Needles are now legal, and there's also restrictions on how they're disposed of. And there's a limited number of kiosks that are available for the legal disposal of them. So, and then add that the use of needles and the use of heroin, because of being so cheap, is very widespread in this community and many other communities such as Spencer. So when somebody finds them on the street, obviously stay away from them. Give us a call. We have the ability to dispose of them through the local Board of Health, and we'll be happy to collect them.
Now, you said the kiosk. What are those called? There's a name for them.
We currently have, they're little kiosks. That's what
like,
they're called,
like
little
snap
disposal
boxes
boxes, exactly, like little metal boxes. They almost look like a little mailbox. We have one in the lobby of the police department in regards to disposal of unwanted prescription medication, non-liquids. We can't take liquids, we can't take sharps or inhalers. And there's some other departments that have the kiosks that can be used for disposal of sharps. But in the absence of that, the ones that are found in the public, you just call the local police department and they'll dispose of them through the local Board of Health.
What would it take, Chief, to get something like one of these kiosks? Do you have any idea as far as pricing goes, or what it would take to put them?
I'm not really sure. It's not necessarily the price of the device. It's just what happens to them after that. It would have to be, in our particular case, it would be the Board of Health that would dispose of them. So that would be something that we would look at. I know since we've been awarded the kiosk that we have at the lobby of the police department in regards to prescription medication through the CVS program. And we'd be also looking at one possibly for the sharps to do the same.
It seems like it'd be a good idea, because if nothing else, get them off the streets so that people, and that's not to say that people, it's like using a garbage can. It doesn't necessarily mean people are going to use it. Just
exactly.
Now, one of the questions that this person asked me was, what about putting out patrols in the areas at certain times? You know, at certain times of the night when it tends to be more prevalent, or when they think this is, you know, that this activity is becoming more prevalent.
One thing I would, and that's one of the things as far as the availability of police officers and how thin we're spread, and what our reliance is on the public, is when somebody like you, like the person that posed the question, sees that kind of activity and they live in the neighborhood, pick up the phone, even if it's an anonymous phone call. And that way, if a patrol is on the outside of town or in another particular location in the downtown, they can go over and take a look and see what's going on. So that helps us direct the patrols. Rather than devote somebody to a particular area on something that may happen, we can rely on our partners, the citizens, to, if they see something suspicious, pick up the phone and call. Even if it turns out to be nothing, I'd rather have 100 calls turn out to be nothing than miss one.
And call immediately, not 10
exactly,
or 15
and
minutes
not
down
letting
the
us
line.
know. Oh, by the way, yesterday or earlier this morning, when they see it, if they see it going on, that would be the time, the ideal time, because then hopefully, if they're up to no good, we can see what that is.
Let's see. I got it. I think that just about covers it. I mean, that was most of the questions that people had. What's the biggest issues facing you as you go forward? I mean, is there anything that is alarming, or something on the horizon you're seeing or noticing a trend? Or
I'd like to just touch on a little bit about the cybercrime and the identity theft. There's just so much. I mean, I've been asked by some people that, geez, couldn't you do a reverse 911 type of call, or couldn't you put something in the paper? And like I said, it's not like the old days. There's just so many of these identity theft kind of issues that are going on. I mean, just to touch on a couple of them, there's an IRS scam that's going on now where someone will call you on the phone and say, identify themselves as an IRS employee looking for money to make a phone call. And they do things through debit cards and things like that they seem very legitimate. There's advanced fee scams where somebody will call up or you'll receive a check in the mail that's very legitimate in some cases, and they ask that you cash that check and send them back money. You'll get a call about a relative that's supposedly in trouble in another country and asked to send some money. But I mean, you laugh, and I laugh too about that, but you'd be surprised on how many people actually take advantage of it. And they're successful, because you figure those folks that are perpetrating those kind of calls can do thousands of calls, and even if they hit off one person, you know, they've made their money for the week. So I think one of the points that I would like to make, that if it sounds too good to be true, in most cases it probably is. You're not going to get money for nothing. It doesn't work that way, and you always got to check things out. You don't give out any kind of information that anyone's calling about, any kind of personal information, access to your accounts, unless you've really checked it out. And most likely, you can hang up and then initiate the call with whatever particular organization is calling yourself. So I think that's one of the most pervasive problems that we're going to be facing as a law enforcement base. And it's very frustrating, because in many cases we can't do anything.
There's nothing.
All we can do is kind of guide the person to how to repair their credit. We have information packets that are available on our website to help do the credit restoration. But it's like you said, it's a very involved process, and in many cases, you never 100% get your credit repaired. There's always going to be that hint that something happened that you'll have to explain even years later. So the best prevention is to just not give out that information under any circumstances, unless you're 100% sure about who you're talking to.
It's amazing what people will do.
Yep.
It's, you know.
Well, they feel that. I mean, I think the average person believes that the people that they're dealing with are going to be telling the truth, and it's just on a one-on-one basis. Yet maybe I'll give somebody the benefit of the doubt, but when you're dealing over the phone or when you're dealing over the internet, you got to assume that somebody's out to scam you, unless you know who that person is, and you got to take the necessary precautions.
Well, Chief Darin, I thank you very much for coming in.
No, you're very welcome.
Thank your staff for doing a great job, and
I'll pass that along.
Continued success in the job and trying to get this done.
Thanks much.
Thank you very much, Chief Darin, and we'll be right back with the other side in a minute. And we're back. I want to thank Chief Darin for coming in last night and doing that. Unfortunately, he had a previous commitment, so he couldn't do the taping tonight with us live. But he was good enough to come in last night, and I thought it was a good interview. How are we doing tonight, Paul?
I'm doing great, Bob. How are you?
Marvelous. Let's get right into this, because we got a couple issues we want to talk about. Let's start with you. You've been doing a lot of stuff on the site with Common Core, trying to educate people about this. trying to get more information. You've done a great job. So why don't you explain the stuff you've been finding out there?
Well, actually, the only thing I've been finding out is negative stuff.
Yeah, none of it's
and
good
none
news.
of it's any good. Common Core was born out of. It's actually a for-profit company. There was some governors involved. There was a big list of people, but the strange thing is the feds weren't really involved. The Department of Education wasn't really involved. There were no, teachers or educators, that type of thing, that were really involved.
Which is kind of unusual.
Which is
for
kind
a
of
revamping of an education program.
which is kind of strange. There's a lot of resistance to it because it was forced onto people, or forced onto cities, towns, and states, and not really brought out and tested, and then tweaked and refined. It was more of, here it is, this is what we're going to do. If you don't want to become part of this, well, we're going to take money away. That's really what it was. It was a strong arm. So I think what ended up happening, and this is just my own opinion, is you've got people trying to increase the intelligence of our kids, but at the same time kind of dumbing down some of the stuff so that it's more of a middle road. That's why I think they called it common. So it's kind of like right in the middle of the road. And I understand critical thinking, and I understand all that. But if you do research and listen and read to what doctors and psychologists and stuff say, kids, the younger kids, the cortex isn't even developed enough to do any type of critical thinking. We get kids still trying to learn math facts, and then they're throwing in not only the math facts, but 5 extra steps to get to one answer. So that's kind of that's kind of the nutshell of it. But there's been a lot of resistance, and it keeps growing in momentum with this Common Core thing. And the latest is the town of Tewksbury. Let's see, so Tuesday night, the town itself voted to get away from the Common Core. They don't want it. They don't want that, and they don't want park testing. There's a big groundswell between Common Core and all the testing that goes on, and who gets that data and what do they do with it. I mean, our kids are based upon. Our teachers have, when MCAS came in, teachers went from teaching to teaching the MCAS, and that's really not what we need to do. We need to teach kids, period. I don't understand where the line is, and I know some of the MCAS stuff was to hold teachers accountable for what they teach. I get that. I understand that. But it doesn't do a bit of good for our kids if all you're teaching is the answers that are on the test. Mm-hmm. But the test is driven so much that schools rely on that for their levels. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 levels. And when those scores come back, you can either be a level 1, a 2, a 3, or 4. Well, obviously it's important to be a level 1. If you're a level 1 school, kids now with school choice will gravitate to that. But if there's just a few things, snafus in this test, you could drop down to a level 3 without it even mattering. It could be like 5 kids don't take the test, or it could be these kids are low income, and it skews the numbers. And when you skew the numbers, it moves the schools from level to level. It's really
kind of like what happened with MCAS with Prouty.
With Prouty, right? It's really kind of a crazy thing, but there's a groundswell throughout the country that parents, teachers, administrators have had absolutely enough of being force-fed stuff that isn't going to do our kids any good. And a lot of the states that had originally adopted into this Common Core are now drifting away from it after they realize what's inside of it and what programs that they have to follow, the amount of money it's going to cost them. It's just crazy. Our own teachers, we didn't even have enough money we got the manipulatives, but it was something that was downloaded, offline.
Right.
But what they had to do was then make copies of those pages so they could follow the program. So we didn't even have enough money to get the whole program. We just got it once, and then they copied stuff off of that.
And the ironic part of this is from what we understand, is teachers were given this not during at the end of the school year last year when they obviously knew this was going to happen, but 3 weeks into the school year this year.
I was told 2 to 3 weeks into the year, and then this got rolled out. So I'm not even sure how versed our teachers are in it, and I feel bad for them because it puts them in a bad. If they can't grasp it and teach it, how are our kids going to absorb it? How are we going to learn from? How are our kids going to learn from teachers that may be having a hard time communicating this to the kids? So it's a double-edged sword, or I don't know what you want to call it, chasing your tail. We're going around in circles, but we can put as much information on our Facebook page as we can gather. I'm looking for some rebuttals from anybody that would tell us different, that this stuff is working, and nobody has stepped up and said a word.
And there's been a lot of we've seen some of the hits we've gotten on the site, and it's amazing how much interest this has garnered. I'm really kind of surprised because there's we're getting 300-400 hits on something. Just you put up a video or something and it just takes off.
Well, I don't think parents even knew that this was being rolled out until somebody started. I don't even remember who it was. Somebody started posting some questions of what's going on with the math.
Well, there was graphics. There was actual people. Remember when you first told me about it? You said you got to look at this, and I sat down with my wife Sunday, and I said, look, you got to see this. I said, this is the funniest thing you're ever going to see. It took her 15 minutes. You can go. It was just a simple math equation. It was 365 minus 44, something like that, and you would just do the subtraction. Mm-hmm. Well, Common Core, you round the tens out. And there's this whole 4 or 5 step process. And I said, you gotta, and she's reading the directions on how to do this. And she says, I can't do this.
And I don't know if we can't do it because we haven't been taught it or shown it. And this is the first time we're seeing it.
I'm sure that's a portion of it.
But the problem I have is if we have kids that are having problems with simple math facts, how do those kids adapt to something like this, where it's a 5 or 6 step process of math facts to get to an answer?
And a couple people that I respect that like our site have gone out there and said this is part of the critical thinking process, and I respect that. Mm-hmm. And I respect the idea of using critical thinking. But if you're in 4th or 5th grade, do you really have that kind of intuition and that intuitive ability to go in there and do this thought process? Because I'm looking at this, and I consider myself pretty damn good at math. And I'm looking at it, and I'm just like, you got to be kidding me. I was lost. And it's and I'm sure part of that is because I was never trained that way. I was trained in the old Catholic school. If you got it wrong, they whacked you in the head with a ruler. So
Sure.
Your cognitive skills were a little bit twisted.
Yeah.
But I mean, in spite of that, it's like you learn how to do the subtraction. You know how to, and the critical thinking comes later. I'm wondering if they're not. And to be fair, we know as much about this as probably just enough to be dangerous. I mean, Paul's done a lot of research on this. We're planning on doing a show. I know we talked about doing a show just about the Common Core, and hopefully try to get some people who might be willing to come in. Not from this district, of course, because they're not allowed to. But just to try to explain this, because there's been no rollout of this. I mean, superintendent had to have known this has been coming for some time. What do parents do when you come home and your kids bring something like this home, and they say, Dad, can you help me with this? And you're looking at this and going, I'd like to, but I can't even explain it to you. There's no support system out there. There should have been like a whole thing of bringing parents in and saying, look, we're going to have a thing at the school, and we're going to have this production.
I'm going to go back and look for the information, but there was a school district that actually had meetings where parents could come in and they would learn.
That makes sense.
And then on the other hand, parents are like, listen, I've already gone through school. I've already graduated. I've got kids. Why do I have to go back to school to learn math? So you can see both sides.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's very strange that it took a parent to put a post on a page questioning what was going on in the school, and that's when I started doing a little bit more research and getting into. But I still, right now, I can't find anything. The whole one of the posts I put on this morning had to do with the New York Teachers
I saw that.
Union, just pulling away from the whole Common Core thing. They've taken their support away from it. So is that just math? Is that English language and arts? Is that the entire Common Core thing? Some states have adopted it, but then have tweaked it so that they find it better for their liking, that type of thing. They've used it as a guideline, but how they've done it. I'm not sure exactly how this whole thing works. I just find it very strange that, it's introduced 2 to 3 weeks into the school year and kind of dropped on us, not, at the end of last year should have been, okay, listen, we're going to adopt the Common Core standards and we're going to align our curriculum to those standards. You guys got some work to do over the summer. Didn't even sound
Which would have made sense. That would have made a
it
hell
didn't
of a
even
lot
sound
of
like
sense.
it didn't even sound like it went that way. And again, that's just another dig into the teachers that we just didn't need. And I don't know. I feel bad for them because of what has.
They're underprepared for.
Absolutely.
You're talking about revamping an entire education system, and I can't lay all this at Secret Ted's feet. He could have rolled this out sooner. He didn't. But the bottom line is, where were the feds on all this? If this is a federal standard of education, it's going to change the way we look at things.
The Fed's name isn't on it.
And what I'm saying is they're allowing this to happen.
I understand, but if
The feds are.
go back-
The feds, nothing is happening here without the federal government knowing that this is going on. We're talking about revamping an entire education system here. You can't tell me that nobody in this administration, in the Obama administration, is saying, "Geez, they just rolled this thing out in the middle of the night. Nobody knew it was coming." It's like, and I'm not blaming it on Obama. Don't get me wrong. This isn't political. The bottom line is, this is a horrible rollout of a program that's supposed to basically change the way we look and the way we view education and the way we teach our children. And you're not even giving the teachers the proper tools to work with here. It just doesn't make any sense. But like I said, this has been Paul's baby from the beginning, and we're going to be rolling out an entire show on this. But we wanted to kind of lay the groundwork for what's going on. If there's any positive feedback from any of the teachers.
send it in anonymously.
Yeah, you can. Nobody's do it.
Yeah,
We don't need you on the show. We're looking. Paul's looking for feedback. So if there's any teachers that have feedback, pro, con, whatever, please try to get a hold of them. Send them a private message. Believe me, nobody's ever going to find out. Superintendent interviews. I missed the one Monday night. I had a class. I went Tuesday night. I guess the thing that made me throw up in my mouth was when a woman said she was a change agent, and it's like, where have I heard that before? Oh, yeah, Dr. Naaman. So as soon as I heard that, I mean, this is nothing against this woman. She was an excellent interview. I think just from what little I saw and from what I heard about the other superintendent candidate that came in, he was as qualified as this woman, and I guess he was, from what I heard, he did a very good job. And after listening to people Tuesday night, people were very excited about this woman. So I think the selection committee, from what I've seen so far, has done a great job. The questions they were asking, I was totally impressed with that. They were asking questions that made sense. They were probing. They tried to get to how would you deal in this situation? How would you deal in that situation? And I mean, there was some great questions.
I didn't get to see either one, so I have no opinion until I see it up online.
And it will be, when it gets on YouTube, we'll be throwing it up. But I think I want to send a shout out to the selection committee and to the school committee in terms of asking the questions and doing the interviews. I thought they did a great job. And this is, you and I have been down this road. This is not the easiest thing in the world to do, is to hire a superintendent.
No, I put a post up about that. It's a crapshoot at best.
Yeah?
And it's like that. And whether it's private or public, when you hire an employee, you don't know what, at face value, could be the perfect person. But once they get into that situation, or they get into the district, or they get into interacting
Surprise.
with other people, doesn't seem to quite go the way it.
It's tough. It's not easy, and it's like you're talking about somebody that basically runs the district. And as we found out with this recent administrator, if he wants to button up and not say anything and not put information out there, and that was one of the things that I thought was kind of amusing, because one of the questions asked of this possible superintendent candidate was, you know, how closely will you work with the school committee? And I started to laugh
Snicker.
to myself. Well, yeah, because it's like, you know, well, maybe, you know, we'll get a superintendent that might actually tell us something once in a while and kind of give us a heads up, like, you know, that something's going on, and not everything is hush hush, because it might be against the law to tell you what's going on. It's like, got to remember, and the superintendent works for the school committee, not the other way around.
Yeah, and from what I've heard, Dr. Malvey likes to play that. Well, you know, that's borderline illegal.
Psychotic?
Borderline, no, it's psychotic. You know, that's borderline. That's borderline. You can't really, you know, that's something I need to take of. You guys
Hear
really
that all the
can't.
time.
It's borderline. It's
Because
borderline.
I'll ask a school committee member something that should be a general question. It's not about personnel. It's not about what happened in executive session. And he's, well, I'd love to tell you, but we can't get the information from Dr. Malvey. And I'm like, well, I suppose on some level that works, you know. And that's the frustrating part, is there really is no reporting agency. If you have a complaint, I mean, you can you know, write to the Division of Secondary Education and file a complaint. It's kind of like filing an AG complaint. Good luck. But I mean, I thought the interviews went really well. On another note, there was a thing in the paper in September, and we failed to talk about this, and I'm kind of surprised that I'd forgotten about it. It had to do with the Spencer Rescue Squad had talked about regionalization. And while they were talking about regionalization, they were saying that they weren't having any luck being able to regionalize with other towns. Well, apparently other towns had no problem regionalizing with themselves. Plan calls for North Brookfield would offer the basic ambulance service via a privately run rescue squad to pay Brookfield and East Brookfield $34,000 each annually to avail itself of a higher level paramedic service now provided by Brookfield and East Brookfield. Now what this does is this gives them, 3 towns are now going to share an ambulance service, which ideally was what we were trying to do with Paxton, but that well kind of got poisoned a little bit. And I mean, we talked about this. We talked about this at the time. We understood that Paxton, there was a lot of behind-the-scenes squabbling going on, and Paxton was probably not going to renew their contract. But we were told by Mr. Suter and the Spencer Rescue Squad at that time,
Probably.
this is going to go. We're going to be fine. They've given us a verbal commitment, and here we are. We're a one-man ambulance service now. And this is not to take anything away from the job that
No.
the folks at Spencer Rescue Squad do. They do a fantastic job, and I applaud what they do, and I have nothing but respect for what they do. But
You're talking 2 different things here.
exactly,
You're
we're talking
about
politics.
You're talking politics
we're
and
talking-
administration
Exactly.
versus these dedicated service people.
Absolutely.
So,
And we're not in any way trying
Right.
to demean the people that work for Spencer Rescue
No.
Squad. That is not the case, and I don't want that being taken out of context. What is the issue here is the people who run Spencer Rescue Squad want everything coming under their umbrella. So, of course, these other towns are like, well, because you guys are paramedics and we have the new building and yada, yada, yada. And it's like, you know, so we're going to run it here. Well, instead of being the team player, here we are now with Spencer Rescue Squad, and when they're out of town, we have Lester covering us quite a bit, from what I understand. You know, which is great, but that's not what we paid for. Now we're in a situation where we're paying $150,000 a year for one ambulance service, and when they're out of town, we have to depend on backup.
that was 150.
Mutual aid.
Did you say $150,000?
$150,000.
What was Paxton's contract?
The amount that they were paying, I don't recall off the top of my head.
You don't remember the line item that Paxton had?
No.
150,000.
Oh, that's right. Who knew? So,
Magic.
I think we just solved the problem. But I thought it was interesting because here's 3 towns that obviously could get this done and get together. And I remember Mr. Suter coming before the board and saying, we just can't seem to get anybody to regionalize. And it's like, well, maybe it's you, Taylor Swift. You know, so it's something I wanted to bring up. I thought it was kind of interesting.
So who's that? East Brookfield, West Brookfield, North Brookfield?
East Brookfield, North Brookfield, and Brookfield. Engine 2. Engine 2's got some issues. I saw Bobby Parsons at the recent select board meeting talking about this. Apparently it's a 1998 Freightliner that was retrofitted.
Right.
And it's not that old. but it was retrofitted, and apparently when they built it, these weren't the kind of machines they should have been using for that process.
Makes sense.
So unfortunately, as young as it is, the tank is gone. The pump is gone. The frame is gone. Bo was talking about he climbed under the frame and he said it's an absolute train wreck. So they're in the process of trying to figure out how to get this done. I'm really hoping that the fire department feels a little love on this and that they get some community support. And it's not like the last time when they wanted the big truck and they're like, oh well, they just want the newest and the best and the brightest. It's like, well, yeah. These are guys that are risking their lives every day, and we've said this time and time again on this show to anybody in public safety. These guys risk their lives. They should be given the best equipment and the best.
I don't even think this truck was set up as a fire truck to begin with. Wherever they got this was a surplus truck, if I'm not mistaken. Or they got it used and they
right. Yeah,
it wasn't.
I believe you're right.
I
and
can't.
Bob had nothing to do with buying this truck. This
Right.
was all before Chief Parsons came in. Yeah, Jeff says he thinks it was used, but it was a fire truck. But it's not the. They said the Freightliners. They said the Freightliners were not. For some reason, they just weren't great vehicles for this kind of thing. And they've had. And Chief Parsons said, in fact, it was in the new Leader article today, that this thing has been a train wreck since they brought it in. Which is tough because these guys are down to 2 engines now, and now they're going to be putting the one they put up at the Abbey, which they retired a number of years ago. They're putting that back online. So if you have a problem with a truck and you need another pump, there, and it's a major fire. Because I was talking to Lieutenant Churchy the other day, and he was telling me, we got called out of town on a mutual aid fire, then got a call in our place. So you're down to 2 trucks now instead of 3, and it doesn't sound like much, but you know what? This is somebody's home. This is the difference between saving somebody's home and losing it.
Well, you got almost 12,000 people that live in this town. You should have some proper fire protection, proper operating.
It's a pretty scary situation.
So this is probably going to end up, I'm guessing he's going to put some type of application together or parameters or something that is going to list exactly what they need and is going to be a cost associated with it.
Well, they've already got it. They've got a truck, from what I understand, from what Chief Parsons says. They've got a truck in mind already. They have what they call demo trucks. The companies send out these different trucks as demonstration models, and they tour around and they show it to the different departments. And it's not really a used truck, but it's a much cheaper model than if you had something built brand new. And Chief Parsons said we can send it back to the factory within 60 days, get it retrofitted for what they need. They need a equipment on the front that'll help them pump from the front and the back, facilitate them fighting fires. And he said it's exactly what we need. And from what I understand, he's been in talks with Adam Gaudette, trying to figure out, do we do a debt exclusion? How do we approach this? Do we pay for this with free cash? I'd rather see a debt exclusion.
I think we have some stuff coming off the books, as a matter of fact. If I'm not mistaken, I think one of the schools, I think Knox Trail. That's going to be very close to coming off the books. And
Knox Trail's coming off. There's a couple things within the next 2 or 3 years. There's a couple things coming off the books, and this is going to be like almost a $500,000 purchase. But it's one of those things where it's like they were hoping they could get this thing, they could limp this thing along for another year or two, and they didn't want to be in this situation either. They're already down a truck now, so just kind of hoping that they hear it.
Holding off the inevitable, and that's what has gotten this town into the situation that we're in, because we always try to. You always try to duct tape and bubble gum things.
We wait till it breaks and then we fix it.
Yeah, you can't do that, man. You just can't do that. So, people, something's going to end up coming up sooner I would say probably within a year. That, if not before that, they'll be looking for, the fire department's going to be looking for a truck, and we got to come through for them. So it could be your house that's burning. So
we got to do something, and everybody's always in that boat of well, it's the fire department. It's like, it's a volunteer fire department, folks. Okay, these guys aren't getting paid big bucks to do this.
We learned that when Chief Parsons came in and told us exactly what some of these guys make going into it. $9, whatever it was.
300 hours they have to put in just to be in that position to be.
Maybe back in the old days, years ago, being a volunteer firefighter was, not a big thing. The tone went off. You threw your boots and stuff on. You went, okay, where do I go, Chief? This is full training and stuff now. This isn't, these guys are dedicated to what they do, and they're volunteers.
Yeah, they
So-
are. And they're dedicated volunteers. We got one of the best trained fire departments in the state, from what I understand. I mean, it's too bad because when they lost the override, they lost the funding to be able to do the close confined rescues, to be able to
Yes.
do the dive team. Now, if somebody goes in the water, God forbid, we don't have a dive team because we can't do it because of liability issues. Even though they know how to do it, it's like anything else. If you're not training to do it all the time, you could lose your life. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
Chief Parsons is not going to risk losing one of his folks. You know, it's just
So
it's
be
not
on
worth it.
be on the other end of that stick, and being there and saying, that's my son or my daughter or my wife or husband
even imagine.
in that water. What do you mean I got to wait for Lester or Auburn to show up? We've got divers here. Go get him. And he's going to say, no, I can't do that.
Yeah.
So be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, because I mean the override's coming up in November, so that's going to be interesting. I don't
That's
know
got
how it's going to roll out.
Well, it's pretty simple. It's got to come. We need the override. We need it. It's got to. We need to replace the things that we've lost or going to lose more, and that's not. It's not fair. I'm sorry, but it's just not fair.
Well, town hall's open 3 days a week, and I went up there on a Thursday without thinking. A couple weeks ago, I had an afternoon off, so I figured, well, I'll go up because I had some stuff I needed to take care of, and I'm like, damn, it's closed. You know, it's like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. In fact, I ran into Mary Baker Wood in the grocery store Sunday, and she told me she's putting in a waiver so that the library doesn't lose their accreditation. And she said, in all the years I've been doing this, she said, I've never been in a situation where a library might lose accreditation. Which means that they pull the library cards, you can't go and use your library card and go to Leicester or say the Worcester Library or East Brookfield or Brookfield. Nothing. You can't do that. You can go there. You can certainly go there and partake of the services, but you can't take a book out or any kind of materials out because you don't have a library card, and you're not from that town, so you're restricted. Whatever you use, you have to use on the site, and then turn it in at the end of the day.
So, as far as the accreditation of that's concerned, what would stop that? Does it have to be open a certain amount of hours?
Well, that's the biggest thing. She said we're barely maintaining services now, and she said, we're trying to do it with a minimum staff. I mean, I never realized, and I'm almost embarrassed to say this, and I posted this. I went on the library's website after I talked to Mary. That's a pretty comprehensive site. I mean, it's a very, very
They do a lot of
website.
stuff there. They do a lot of stuff. They
She
have a
said
lot of stuff for
They
kids.
can't do children's programs. They can't do, they were doing the reading programs. They were doing, stuff for the kids. They have like a kids corner kind of thing. They did things with the seniors. It's like all that's gone. And it's like, it's amazing when she was running numbers by me when I was at the meeting and they had the department heads in and she was running some of the numbers by me. I was absolutely flabbergasted because I was a regular at the library when my kids were little. That was, that's what we always took the girls. That was their big treat. They got a chance to go and have a couple of books, and we go a couple times a week. And you get out of that habit. And I went on that website and I was blown away by the amount of services that were offered at the library. It was amazing. And if you get the chance, go on, Google the Spencer Library and look at what their website has. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. I mean, you can learn the languages. There's no, they'll help you look for a job. They'll help you set up a resume. It's like when they're fully staffed and up and running. But, right now they're not. And like Chief Darin said last night, he said, yeah, there's things I'd like to have. There's things I'd like to see. He said, we're working with the same 17 guys we've worked with for the last 20 years, or less, I think he said 17 or 20 years that I've been here. And he said that hasn't changed. He said, so, that would be kind of nice to have, have some more help. But he said, we were talking before we went on the show, and he said, you got to be a team player, because he said there's other departments that are hurting just as badly as we are. He said, so, we all got to take that bite.
Did he do a breakdown of full-time to part-time?
No, he did. We did talk. He just said there's 17 guys, and he was talking about, trying to cover the shifts, and we talked about the needle exchange program and not the needle exchange program, the fact that they're finding needles, and there's just it's kind of like because one of our friends brought up the thing about finding needles out by the Cumberland Farms, out by the dumpster, and it's like my wife said to me last night. She says, "Well, do you think somebody's going to really go to a needle kiosk? Like, say you set up a needle kiosk, just for instance, say you set it up on the side of the town hall. Do you think somebody's really going to go there because they're going to think, well, there's a surveillance camera. If they see me throwing away the needle, they're going to know I'm a junkie." It's like, good point. So. There's always, for every good idea, there's always another idea behind it that comes along and slaps you in the head. But I'm thinking about reaching out to Lee Jarvis or talking to Adam and saying, look, can we put something out there at least to try to get some of the stuff off the streets. You know, if we can do it in a discreet
And who's
kind of
gonna
way.
who's gonna empty that?
I guess that would be you. It's one of those things. It's, you know, there's
And then
got
what
to
do
be
you do
ways
with
of
it?
working this out. You know, there's got to be, you know, it's about throwing ideas around. It's about trying to come up with some kind of a different way to do something. You know, it's like anything else. It's like you got to try to figure out what might work or what might not work. There's so many things to look at. And he was great last night. He was very open. We talked a little bit beforehand, and when we did the interview last night, he was great. Very, there was nothing that was off limits. He said, no, whatever you want to do, let's talk about it. And we're lucky because there's really not that much to talk about in terms of the police department or the fire department for that matter. I think we're pretty lucky. Our public safety is pretty tight. And I think it's because of these people are so dedicated at what they do. And they take
I know the fire department had their pancake.
major hit from what I understand.
Was it?
I couldn't go. I ended up having to go to Cambridge to look at work Sunday morning. But I talked to a friend of mine, and he went and he took his daughter, and he said, unbelievable. Said, you walk in, sit down, the guys have, what do you want to drink? Go on coffee, juice, milk, yada, yada, yada. Bam, next thing you know, breakfast is in front of you. They were taking donations. And the thing with these donations is these guys aren't going out and buying new equipment. They're not buying new turnout gear, which is the gear they wear to protect them during a fire,
Right.
which some of the gear is already old.
Well, it has
enough to
a
be-
shelf life
a
anyway.
10, I think it's a 10-year life
I forget
expectancy,
what he
and a
said.
lot of their gear is already shot. These guys are putting this into the scholarship fund. You know, they gave away all kinds of scholarships at the last graduation. I mean, this is always giving back to the community on top of the fact that they're volunteering to do this. You know, so it's pretty impressive. So I was really disappointed that I couldn't make it. I really wanted to go down there because I've never been to one. And I guess it was from what I understand, it was really well. Really
I've
well
gone a couple
received.
times with the kids, and they, you know, it's pretty funny. 'Cause
Quite the bash from
it
what
is.
I understand.
They do a very good job there. Very good job.
I did want to mention in the new leader today, the East Brookfield Marina. I've been meaning to mention this the last couple of shows. If you haven't been down there, I was telling you right before the show.
Lashaway.
Lashaway. I could not remember the name of that lake to save my life.
Lake Lashaway.
If you go down by Lake Lashaway, you go by there, and they're redoing Lake Lashaway Inn. That's being redone. They're doing a beautiful job on that, too. They put a whole new marina section in, and I guess there's a new spillway that they got the state and the feds to pay for part of it. And some real frugal work on their part. Nice job, absolutely gorgeous. Hats off to the guys in East Brookfield that got this done. It was absolutely a stellar job. It's absolutely gorgeous. And the Lake Lashaway Inn is looking beautiful. I can't wait till that's done. They really, really did a nice job. Couple things real quick. Talk of the Town. Please watch Talk of the Town. Gary Woodbury's now doing that. I think it's a good idea. He's going to make it very community-oriented. And I think that's... It's on Monday. Is it the first Monday of each month, Josh, like the old schedule? All right, it's going to be on Mondays at 7. If you want to go on our Facebook page, we're the other side. Just go into Facebook, the top of the searches, just type in the other side. And please check out Lily Lund's pages. She does a great job. She runs a Spencer Forum. She runs a Spencer
Bulletin board.
Bulletin Board, and she runs a Spencer Non-Collaborative PTO. And those are all sites that we haunt. I mean, she's always got good information out
The
there.
unofficial.
The unofficial, because we don't have an official PTO.
That's right.
And she's a hot ticket.
Actually, Dave Bayshant actually approached me about a PTO.
Really?
Yep.
David's been very active since he took over.
He doesn't have one in his school, and he was looking. He had reached out, and when he said he'd love to have one. The other thing that's going on this weekend is homecoming.
Oh, that's right.
It's homecoming, and that starts tomorrow night. So there's festivities. They got Chinese food up from Chef Sal.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, and there was some other Chinese food from Chef Sal. And it was all kinds of stuff that Byron Dean had posted about what was going on this weekend. There's a couple of games tomorrow night, soccer games, and there's football games. They got a lot of stuff going on. So
All right. Well, we're just about out of time, so don't forget to watch the show on the 23rd, when we'll have Matt Castriata, the Democrat candidate, and Donnie Berthium, the Republican candidate, in an open debate. Please watch us on the 23rd, and we'll see you then, folks. Have a good night. Take care.
2 weeks.